Professor BRB here. Today we're going to take a second look at the pen tool and increase our skill with this most important tool in Adobe Illustrator. Please open up the file Pen Tool Mastery. And in your View menu, I'd like you to make sure that you're in Outline View. So if you start out in Preview, just choose Outline. And I'd also like you to make sure that Snap to Grid, Snap to Point, and Smart Guides are all turned off. So they should be unchecked, not checked. Let's go to our Artboards panel and navigate to Artboard 3, Cloud Shell. And first we're going to tackle the footprint. Now there's actually no need to use the pen tool for the toe prints here because they're very close to being symmetrical, not quite. But it's going to be easier in this case to just start with an ellipse. But that's good because it's going to give us a little hint about how Illustrator thinks. And go back to outline mode here. Notice that Illustrator has drawn an ellipse for me. And if I take my direct selection tool and click on the curves, I see my anchor points and my handles. And you can see that it's placed 4 points at the top, the bottom, and the left and the right of the shape. And that the handles are a very similar length, because this is almost a symmetrical ellipse, not quite. If I had decided to draw a very tall, skinny ellipse, come on, you will see that where there's a short curve, I get a very short handle, and where there's a long curve, I get a long handle. So that's kind of interesting. If I were to drag that curve out, you'd see that I'd suddenly get a non-symmetrical shape. So that gives us a few little hints into how Illustrator sees things. So we're going over here. We can move our anchor points around. It's pretty easy to do. And just a few little adjustments, and I've got my toe print kind of the way I want it. So that was good. And now let's go to the pen tool. And we remember that the ellipse tool drew I don't like the way that looks there. Fix it. Illustrator kind of brings out the perfectionist in me, and maybe it will in you as well. That's good. So let's go back to the pen tool, and I'm going to go to the sort of extreme left-hand edge of this curve, and since this foot is not symmetrical, I'm going to have to figure out where to put the points myself. So I'm going to click here to establish my anchor point, and I'm dragging out in the direction of the curve I want to make. Don't just drag out like any old way. Drag in the direction you want to make the curve to be. And as we look up at the top, I'm always thinking a step ahead of where my next point is going to be. And I was planning to put it about up here. So I dragged my handle out about 1/3 of the distance to that new point. Click and drag that out. And I'm just kind of looking for changes in direction and placing my points as far apart as I can, but I need, every time there's a major direction change, I'm going to need a new point. Clicking and dragging, and I drag a shorter distance when I have a shorter curve. And I'm going to drag a longer distance if I see a long curve coming up. And here I'm closing my path, and this is very important. I'm going to do Command Z. You notice when I hover over here, do you see how that little circle, when I get to the anchor point, that little circle pops up? That's very important, because that means that I'm creating a closed path, that it's sealed. And this went a little bit wacky, not the way I wanted, but it's going to be very, very easy to fix it. So I'll go to my direct selection tool. I can move my point around. I can shorten these handles. And without too much difficulty, I can edit this curve and get it looking very, very close to what I want. One feature of what I call of smooth points, what I call kind of rocker handle points, is sometimes when you edit one side of the curve, it changes the other one. In this case, it actually changed it for the better. Sometimes it seems to sort of mess up the other side of your curve, and that's a little bit frustrating to work with, but I think you'll eventually see that it's a very good feature because these smooth points assure us that we're going to have a smooth curve. If this is printed out in any resolution or if it is enlarged to an absolutely gigantic size, it's still going to be a nice smooth curve and look exactly the way that it should. So I can see I've got a lot of little editing to do here, but since my points were placed in a good place, it doesn't really take me too long. And if I go back into preview mode here, maybe get rid of my outline and get my fill box on top and choose kind of a sand color. So I'm thinking it's a footprint in the sand. If I want to, I can choose my toe and just get my eyedropper tool and eyedropper that formatting. And I'm pretty well on my way to completing this at this point. Once I had drawn all of these ellipses, which I'll let you do on your own, I would select everything and probably group it. Just go Object, Group. And that's handy because it means if I click one, I get them all and they aren't going to be separated. So next, let's move on to something a little more complex and try the boater here. And we can see already that this is a perfect circle up here, so there's no need for me to get involved with the pen tool. I'm just holding down my Shift and Option keys and getting it just about the right size and kind of moving it into position. Let's go back to outline mode, and that was a pretty good guess there. Doesn't really matter what my stroke and fill are in outline mode, but I'll just return this to default, which is a white fill and a black stroke. So let's take a look at what we have here. And going to the pen tool, we learned earlier that when you are just doing straight corner points, all you need to do is click, no need to drag. Holding down my Shift key, and I'm clicking. Releasing my Shift key, because I'm not making a perfectly level point, and I'm just going to click here and release, and then I'm going to click on it again and drag up in the direction of my curve. Click here and drag down, and notice I'm going about 1/3 of the distance, and eventually I'll even these two out. So I'm just going to click here and then click and drag, and I think I'll put a point right here. Click and drag, click and drag. And then I'm going to actually click on this point and kill that control handle because I'm going to a straight. Click, 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 click and drag because I've got a curve coming up. Now this becomes a little trickier, and I prefer working left to right, so I'm going to actually jump over here. So I'm going to jump over here and click and drag, click and drag. In this case, I'm going to hold down my Option key so that I can drag a corner handle up. So this is a hinged corner, which means it's a corner point, but it has two handles, and we'll see why we need that later. Now, when I look at this whole curve, this whole kind of wave shape, I can see that it's fairly regular. So I can probably figure out a way to place my points in a kind of a regular manner. So I'm clicking and dragging out flat here. I'm going to the very bottom of my curve, and I'm holding down my Shift key to sort of flatten my handles. And I'm just going to try guessing where the center of these curves are and clicking and dragging. And that's actually working out pretty well. When I come to this final point, I want to close my path. And note here that my little white circle is popping up again. And I can click and drag, and that's good. So I just need to do a little bit of editing here. I had the right idea, but I kind of pulled a little too much there, and I can kind of curve this in and curve this out, and pretty easily I can kind of see that my strategy was good because my points are, I only have a few points here, and yet they're doing the job I need them to do. So just kind of fool with it a little. I can come back and work on this a little bit more. But I've kind of got my strategy now that I think will enable me to get these curves here looking good without too awfully much work. So if I click and drag here, and I'm just clicking at the top of the curve and dragging out flat. I have to release my Shift key because if I don't, it'll put it somewhere I totally don't want it to be. So I have to release my Shift key, and then after I've clicked, I can engage the Shift key again. Release, engage, because I'm trying to make these look fairly symmetrical, so I want my curves to come out, my handles to come out flat. Now just a little bit of editing, and I should be able to get these curves to look pretty good. So now that I have completed my curve, I have an opportunity to save some time because I've got another identical curve underneath. So if I go to my black arrow, my selection tool, I select this curve, and once I start dragging it, I can hold down my Option key. I can put this in position, and I see that matches quite well. So all I really need to do now is to close up these ends. I've got to use my direct selection tool for that. So I click off, make sure nothing's selected. Select just those 2 points and nothing else. And if I go to Object, Path, Average, I just want to average these on the vertical axis. That makes sure they're exactly straight. And then I can go Object, Path, Join. Beautiful. Do the same thing over here. Click off, just select those 2 points, Object, Path, Average, Vertical, and Object, Path, Join. Now I have a closed shape here. I can also use the Object Path Average. I notice here I didn't get all of these points here on the exact same axis. So with my direct selection tool, I can select those and just go to Object, Path, Average. In this case, I want a horizontal axis. And that just straightened those up for me nicely. Just a little more editing here. And it should be very quick now to finish up this one last little shape. Shift key here for straight, Shift key, Shift key. So here I'm going to click and drag, my Shift key, click and drag, and here making sure I'm closing my point. Click and drag. And there we have our boater.